share my screen. I can't always see the chat. So Allison helps me be my partner and make sure that I'm not missing any questions. But if I miss something, just tag me again and I'll make sure that I get everything all answered. But I want to get this going for y'all here because I know that your time is precious as always. So, all right, can everybody see my screen okay? I wanted to make sure that that was up and we're recording, which is awesome. So, all right, y'all, we are going to get all started. So tonight's webinar is all about putting together that final project in your IDS 105 class, but I am going to touch quickly about your week 6 assignments also. But we also want to make sure that you understand how to utilize the academic support team and their services and how to access everything that they can bring you for your success. Okay, so first and foremost, your experience here at Southern New Hampshire University is important to us. It's our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of instruction or course design that present any barriers to accessibility, please notify the Online Accessibility Center team. The OAC is what they're called, as soon as possible at 866-305-9430. Or you can also email them at oac@snhu.edu or visit the Online Accessibility Center website. A lot of students have questions about what this OAC team is and what they do. This department is here at the university to help learners or students just like you get content. This can be classroom content, webinar content in a way that works best for you and your learning style. So if you have questions about that or want to know more, reach out to the OAC. They're wonderful. They'll answer any questions that you might have and make sure that you get what you need if that's a service they can provide you. Okay. Couple of webinar reminders. We're in an academic space, so always be mindful of your conduct. And then these webinars, they're not graded. They're not required. There's no extra credit, but they will walk you through assignments from week to week and talk about the concepts that you're working on in your course. And I sure hope that they've been helpful this term and you've had a little bit of fun with them and they might have made you smile because I know sometimes I like to joke around with y'all. This week, we are week 6, right? So here in week 6, I know that usually the webinars, when they're on demand or pre-recorded, are loaded bright and early Monday morning or really the weekend. If you've been watching them, you know I load them a little bit early. But we wanted to make sure to still touch on the assignments in case you haven't gotten to them yet or you're stuck or have questions. So this week in IDS 105, you have a journal assignment and you have a discussion assignment. So just as a reminder with that journal assignment, they're always due by Sunday of the week that they're assigned, right? So make sure you have that turned in by this Sunday. And then discussions, initial post due Thursday, a minimum of 2 peer responses due by Sunday, right? Y'all are in week 6. How is that even possible? I feel like it's just gone so fast. So you guys know the drill by now, right? You know how this stuff works, but just a couple of webinar reminders for that journal assignment. Make sure that you're answering those questions in like a Microsoft Word or PDF document or something compatible so that your instructors can open those up and grade them. Video note submissions are permitted for journal assignments. So if it's a journal assignment, you can do a video note submission, but if you do a video note submission, remember that you want to make sure that you review the criteria for that so you know how to turn those in. They're super cool. If you've never done a video note submission for an assignment, that you can do it. It's really neat and it's different, but you want to make sure you kind of have a script and you have your information in case your instructor has questions, it's ready to go. So some students feel like it's a little bit more work, but it's really kind of a fun way to turn in your assignments. As a reminder, you do get Office 365 for free as an SNHU student. And then again, with those discussions, initial discussion post due Thursday, peer responses Sunday, journal due by Sunday. Okay. So let's talk quick about week 6 discussion assignment. This week, you are talking in your classes about empathy. So this is a big topic for a lot of students. They maybe don't understand what empathy is or how they can be empathetic or how others maybe are or aren't empathetic. And so everything this week just centers around that concept of empathy. So you're going to be answering 2 questions this week. 1, how do you listen to others with empathy in the online learning environment, or how could you? And 2, how have others listened to you with empathy? So like always, for initial discussion post due by Thursday, make sure you share your thoughts for both questions, use examples, be detailed. It helps not only your instructor understand what you're trying to say, but also the other students that are in your class, okay? And then make sure too, as you go through and answer your questions, that if you could put examples in there, that's always really helpful. So that's a discussion assignment. Questions on that, y'all? I know that was kind of quick, but I'm sure some of you guys have already probably started that since your initial discussion post is due tomorrow. But I don't know. I have a lot of students that like to turn things in on Thursday. So it just kind of depends. This week's journal assignment, like I said again, is due on Sunday, and everything centers on the topic of feedback. Feedback can be a tough thing for a lot of people. Some of us love to know how we're doing, whether we're doing awesome or we have things to improve. We like that. We like to work with that. We learn from it. Others of us may have trouble with feedback. We don't like it. Maybe we've had a bad experience with feedback, or maybe you're somewhere in between or a little bit of all of it. But this week, your journal assignment really helps you take a deep dive into how you feel about feedback, but also like what you can learn from it and how diversity awareness comes into play. Okay, so you're answering this week's questions on your perceptions about feedback. So, one, how does receiving feedback make you feel? Be honest, use examples, share details. And if you need to improve that reaction, or if you have to improve it, or you have improved it, make sure you share that too. Question 2 is how you could use past feedback to inform how you give and receive feedback now. So maybe you've had some feedback experiences that have changed the way that you do things. I like to use the example of back in the day when was a leader and I would give reviews. I was pretty short and to the point. And then when I had a leader give me a review that was super short and to the point, I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's it. And so it changed the way that I did my own reviews for my team. Like I wanted to make sure I was more personal. I wanted to make sure I had more examples and details. And I didn't do that until I had a situation that I was like, whoa, that is not how I meant to be doing this at all. So that's just an example of something that you could utilize. But what have you learned from when you have received feedback? How can you apply what you've learned? Question 3 is to describe the impact that diversity awareness has on giving and receiving feedback when you're communicating and collaborating with others. And then question 4, describe how you can use strategies for interacting with diverse groups of people as you give and receive feedback. One reminder I want to give you is always check your chapters that you're reviewing in your assigned readings from week to week, but also don't forget about that content that's within your module, because it'll help you find answers to a lot of these questions, like the strategies and how to move forward as you work on this assignment. Okay, sound good? I did see a question in here. Shirley, will points be deducted if we're over a page for the journal assignment? No, absolutely not. There is not a word count or a page count that's required on those journal assignments. The key is just making sure that you're answering the questions and giving that information in detail. You don't want it to be like 2-3 pages. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. So kind of just look through it, summarize it. If you need some help on maybe like trimming things down or making sure that you're staying relevant and to the point of the questions, but yet including everything you want to include, we're going to be talking about the academic support written feedback team. They would be wonderful to work with for an assignment like this, especially when you're trying to like make sure you're doing it right, but you feel like you have a lot that you're saying. Okay. So I want to make sure I answered that quick before I kind of delve into that final project. So final project, y'all, the biggest thing that I can tell you is, one, you're going to notice it's worth a lot of points. It's worth 250 points. It's your highest point assignment in your IDS 105 class. No matter what you do, you want to make sure that you turn it in. I tell people this all the time. Make sure that you turn it in. Make sure you click submit when you are uploading things, because we've had students that forgot to click submit. Even if it's going to be a little bit late, if life happens, still get it in, because it can really change your grade drastically. And you want to make sure that you get that in and do your best, because you have worked way too hard in your classes to not turn something like that in. Okay, finish the next couple of weeks strong. Make sure you're getting all those assignments in. This week you're going to do that discussion and journal. Next week you just have the project, and then week 8, holy smokes, your last week you have a discussion assignment. Don't miss those key items, because every point counts. Okay, now this project, we get lots of questions about this project. So all term long, you've been working on different project drafts, right? So in module 2, y'all selected a scenario. So there was a personal scenario, a school scenario, a workplace scenario, right? Or you might have created your own. Did any of you all create your own scenario? That is a awesome thing if you did. I've had students that have done that, and it's really pretty cool. But if you did create your own, it was approved with your instructor back in week 2. Okay, so just remember, You picked that scenario in week 2, and then you had project drafts that you worked on in week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, right? So you have already completed that project. However, what your job to do now is to go back, look at the graded feedback that you got from your instructor in week 2, 3, 4, 5 in regards to those project drafts. And if there's things that maybe your instructor said you needed to add to your drafts or revise from your drafts, you want to make sure that the final product that you submit for that final project has those changes and updates, okay? So you're not creating anything new. You're not starting over. You're not picking a different scenario. You're literally taking everything you've done already. So at this point, you have week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, right? And you have, some of you might have separated them into separate little assignments. Some of you might have just kept everything on the template and turned the template in every time. No matter how you did it, what you're turning in is all pieces and parts of that completed document. Okay, so you're not creating anything new. You're going to use the template you've been working on all term long. You're just going to go back and revise it, add anything that you needed to add if that was something that was warranted. And what you're really thinking about is, what have you learned this term? What experiences have you had? What have you kind of connected with or really thought about this term? And just make any updates as they're needed. Make those edits, check your faculty feedback, use your resources, and get it submitted. Okay? So the biggest question I know that I get on this project a lot is, am I starting over? Do I have to do something new? Do I just do what I've already done? Again, you're not starting over. You're not starting anything new. You want to go back and look at those drafts, look at your faculty feedback, and then make sure you turn in a completed document with all the pieces and parts, okay? If you're stuck or have questions on any of your project drafts, or you're not sure about something in the graded feedback area, get with your instructor and get those questions answered now. But the biggest thing is you have resources to help you. And we have Allison Johnson with us from our academic support team. So everybody say hello, Allison. Couple of things about Allison is she is one of our SNHU academic support coaches. She's an amazing human. Her team is incredible. Some fun facts about Allison is she used to teach high school English in a rural town that didn't even have a traffic light. And Allison and I were joking earlier today about how we bond over how small our rural towns were where we came from. I don't know about y'all if you're from rural areas or from big cities, but it's a big deal when you don't even have a traffic light. That's how little it is. Allison has been an academic advisor for online students just like you. She loves to work with all students, but she loves and has a special spot in her heart for those students that have been out of school for a long time. Any of you been out of school for a while? Kind of back, getting your thing, getting your groove back together. She's a huge fan of stand-up comedy and has a collection of old comedy records. And she's one of the many people here at the university that are here to support your success. And we hope that by the time this webinar is over, you feel really comfortable reaching out and working with our academic support team, because there is so many services that they provide you for your success. So how this is going to work is I'm going to ask Allison some questions. It's like I'm interviewing her. And she's going to answer them. We'll kind of go back and forth. And then I'm just going to run through your Module 7 stuff just real quick again before I let you guys go for tonight, okay? So one question I want to answer real quick. I see there's a question here from Marissa about that project. If that it's not like a typical paper or a story. Like you're just filling out the template. You've already done it. So however you wrote your project drafts, as long as your instructor was like, yeah, that's good, that is how you want to turn that in. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to do anything different. Some students get creative with their writing on the final project, and they do write it kind of more like a story, or they write it like a paper as they answer each question. Some students, most students, just answer the questions that are underneath the template. You've already done the work though. So what you want to do is you don't start over. Just go back to like week 2 and like look at your grade and see like, okay, were there any areas that I needed to add some more details or maybe change some things? So review that feedback and then make those changes so that they're visible and ready to go on that final 7 submission. Does that make sense? I know it can be like a little confusing, but I want to make sure that you know that. But if you're stuck or not sure, this is the time to reach out to your instructor and be like, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm doing this the right way. And they'd be happy to answer that and guide you for your success. Okay. All right. So Allison, how do students access the academic support team?
So a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we've got one for you. So when you're in your class, you see that menu right above like the little picture banner. And we are right after Shapiro Library, right before help, which is the IT stuff. We're right there on academic support. There's a few other pathways to get to us, but this is the quickest, easiest, kind of right there in your face, and it's in every single one of your classes. So click on that, and then it pops open a new tab, and then you are in the academic support area, which looks a little like this.
So this is the menu of services that the academic support team has. And Allison, we always get a lot of questions. Is academic support only for certain classes? Is it for any classes? And then sometimes when students like log in when they click on this and they open up this menu, they can be a little bit overwhelmed, like where to start, what to do, what's for them. Can you kind of just run through them so that students understand what the different pieces and parts of your team are?
Absolutely. So I'm one of the academic coaches. I'm one of many, and we have like different parts to this team. So academic coaching, we have peer tutors who are people who are thriving in their classes, doing really well, and have a lot of knowledge to give about the subject area. We have general tutors and the 24/7 drop-in tutoring. And so if we go through the menu, the 24/7 drop-in tutoring are subject specific. And so like if you're in a math class, you click math and then you type in the chat, it's chat or voice chat. That one in the top left corner is good for like if you're stuck on a particular question, can't move forward. It's good for getting unstuck. So you get somebody who's a tutor in that area and they'll kind of walk you through it. They also have whiteboard capability to walk through like math problems and things. And because it's 24/7, if you're working really late at night or really early in the morning, that's going to be the best option. Then we have the written feedback. And so written feedback, you fill out a form, let the person who's reviewing your draft know what you would like to know more about. They have like a little rubric that they go over just kind of looking at general things. But if you tell them about the assignment, about any feedback you receive from your instructor, they will tailor their feedback to whatever you put in the form. You submit the form, it comes back within 12 hours. And so then I always say it's good to give it a day because that way you have time to read it and do something with it. We have workshops. So if you like this experience and the different webinars that you have been attending, the workshops are fantastic. We have them over so many different areas. Lots of study tips, skills, math, science, IDS. We have reading and writing, APA citations, so many workshops. So that's a really good area to come in. You'll get some information, get some time to practice and ask questions. And then the peer tutors are available for one-on-one sessions. So the one-on-one sessions are 45 minutes. This is great if you think like the live chat might not really do it for you. You just really want to understand your assignment or something that you're struggling with in the course and really want to talk face to face with a person about it. There's screen sharing cameras, and you can talk through the thing with a person for 45 minutes. Academic coaching, where I live on this team, is for if you've noticed that you're maybe a little rusty on certain skills like reading comprehension, or you might need a little bit of support for some learning differences, or you are struggling with time management. If you feel like there's an area that you really want to work on over a couple of weeks and improve upon, schedule an academic coaching planning session. You meet with one of us, we come up with some goals and a plan, and then we meet to work on that goal that helps you in all of your classes. And then we also have a bunch of resources in our resource center. We have videos, we have infographics, and you can always just kind of send us a question and let us know like what you need, or type in the chat, the 24/7 chat, and we can find some stuff for you. That's everything, and we are in every one of your classes. We help you now, and if you come and work on your graduate degree, we're here for graduate students as well.
Phew, that's a lot of resources. It's a lot
Yeah.
of things that you all offer. And the biggest thing is, students, it's such a reminder for you that you have all of this literally a click away. It's literally right there for you. So if you're stuck on something, you're not sure on something, you don't have to go it alone. You have a lot of support here, and just give it a try. You don't have to, try everything like today, but as you're working on maybe that week 6 assignment and maybe you're like, oh, I just kind of not sure about it, use the written feedback service, get a feel for what it's like. Maybe you have a class coming up next term that like you don't really love. Like I had a student the other day that is nervous about taking a math class, coming up, and there may be some workshop things or some drop-in tutoring things for them. Or maybe you're somebody that's working on a research paper for one of your classes and you're like, citing things is really hard and I don't know how to do it. They have support for you to help you do it. Okay. So just give it a click, give it a try. There's so much here for your support and your success. And I know a couple of you were like, I need to check out those workshops. Yes, I've had students tell me they're super fun, that they love it, and they were also the best thing, super helpful for what they needed. So Allison, as students are putting together this project, or really just going back and revising this project is really kind of what they're doing at this point. Is there any common mistakes they should be aware of or tips or tricks for their success?
So I know you talked about some, so we'll go over those. I always say like revising, if you just think about what the word is, it's revision, right? Re-seeing. So what you're doing is, especially on this assignment, you're looking back at what you've already written and you're seeing if there's anything else that you can add that you've learned through the course, that your instructor really wants you to add more detail. So you're looking back at the feedback. So it's a lot of, re-seeing, retooling, figuring out, do I need to make any changes? And so that's always the first stop, is looking back at the feedback, making sure that you've presented all the information and details that you can about the topics, and make sure that it's all there. So, especially when we're using templates, it's easy to forget a part, especially if you're moving things into one document or looking back at previous documents. Make sure all the good stuff is there. So you want to take your time to read through it, read it out loud, or better yet, have somebody at home read it back to you, because then you're hearing it for the first time, kind of like you're seeing it through beginner's eyes. You've been sitting with this knowledge for a while, but if somebody else in your household reads it out loud, they might have questions. It's also a good way of sharing the work in all of your classes. Maybe have somebody read the draft back to you. If you don't have somebody at home to do that, the technology does it for you. That's why it's great to have the Microsoft 360, because it has all these cool tools, and one of them is the read aloud feature under the review tab, so it can read it back to you. It also has a dictate button, so if you have a hard time getting started and just want to talk out your thoughts, you can put them down and then revise it from there. But you just want to make sure that it makes sense to somebody who's seeing it for the first time, and that your instructor, when they open up that draft, they're going to see any changes that they asked for, because they took the time to give you that feedback. So it's a good idea to pull up that rubric and grade yourself. So kind of like put your instructor hat on and go through line by line, each bit of that rubric, and think about how you would get graded. I think that's pretty much it. Double check,
Yep.
spell check, written feedback,
Yes.
all of those things.
Yep. No, that's such good feedback. And y'all, the biggest thing is too, and I think that I think it was Cheyenne had a question in the chat too about like, when we're going back and revising, like, do we leave it how we had it? Do we like turn it into like a paper kind of flow? My best advice to you is always, number one, is to check with your instructor. But my other advice to you is whatever format you've already had it in, leave it. You just want to make sure that if your instructor is asking for more information or more details, or you forgot something or needed to add something, that those things are in there when you turn in that final product. Okay. So all pieces and parts have to be there for that final project or final project submission. Students get creative. I have seen students that have put it in like a literal, like, story kind of format. There's been pictures involved. I have had students that leave the template just as is and answer the questions like just how they have it on the template. I've had students that have switched it out and made it read like a paper with different headings. The biggest piece of advice, though, is do what works best for you so that you have the answers, what you need, and all pieces and parts of the project are there. Okay. Do not feel like you have to go back and create something all fancy. Like, if you want to do that, you can do it. But just make sure that you have all pieces and parts of it. I will tell you, when I grade this document, so if Allison was my student in my class, I'm going to take what she submits for that Module 7 project. I'm going to open it up. And as I'm reviewing it, I'm going to go back and I'm going to open up her week 2 assignment for her project draft, week 3, week 4, and week 5. I'm going to go back and look at what she had, compare it to what she has in her final project. I'm going to go and look at what I asked maybe her to change or update in any of the sections of their project. And I'm looking for that in that final project module 7 submission. Does that make sense, y'all? I know it can be confusing because you're like, this is it? But I already did it. Most students are like, wait, I already have this done. Yes, you already have it done. You just might need to go back and tweak some things, or maybe you see something that you're like, I want to expand a little bit more on that because you've learned more about it. Like you're more experienced with that concept now and you want to add to it. You can do that. But you don't have to be starting over. You don't make anything new. It doesn't have to be fancy. Whatever format you had it in, just leave it in as long as that was okay with your instructor. If your instructor was like, hey, this format isn't working, don't leave it in that format for module 7. Switch it to what it needs to be. Sound okay? I know it can be confusing because I have students every term when I teach IDS 105 that are like, wait, Professor Shop, like I already have this done, right? I'm like, yes, you just need to go back and clean it up a little bit. Revise a few things that I asked you to revise, but I just want you to understand how your faculty are grading it. Like we're pulling up all the documents, all the pages, all the pieces, all the grades, all the feedback. These take a long time to grade because we want to make sure that everything is where it needs to be and that you learned how to revise those things if you were needed, or you learned more about those concepts and you're able to apply them. Okay. Allison, what if students procrastinate on the project or lifes, as you say? Allison always says, "With life is lifing." Things happen, best laid plans, right? What do they do to still be successful and feel confident what they're turning in?
Well, the sticky note says it all. Just do it. Get it turned in, because that's the very first thing. I think sometimes, procrastination happens to all humans at some point. It's just something that our brain tries to protect us from something challenging, but also life be lifing. So sometimes things get in the way. So the most important thing is to get it done. Reach out to your instructor if you feel like you might need more time, but I would still say work on it and like maybe get it submitted, because some points is always better than 0 points, for sure. I think we can all agree on that. And I'm not a math major, but something is better than 0 always. So a lot of the things that we talked about can still happen if you have 4 hours or even an hour to get it done, because you have all the previous assignments, so you're just putting them together. If you missed an assignment and need to write that one, you can get it done too. Just make sure you're using the assignment guidelines and rubric. Another thing that I often say that kind of talks about what we talked about in the last slide is think about your most important audience member, your instructor. They're bleary-eyed, they're tired, they're grading a lot of papers, they're putting a lot of effort into this. They pull open your paper, they want to see everything's there. And so using that rubric and grading yourself, you can still do that if you only have an hour. You can just go back through and double check and say, how's my instructor going to see this? Because they might be feeling the same way you're feeling when you're working up to the minute. They're working to get all of these papers graded, and they have a deadline too. So make sure that you double check yourself. You might not be able to do the written feedback because it takes at least 12 hours, but you can still use the technology to help. You can phone a friend, you can ask them to proofread it, you can double check it, you can use the free version of Grammarly or the spell check with that's embedded in there. But the most important thing is get it submitted so that you get the points and don't get a 0.
I echo that, y'all. Some points are better than no points. I tell students that all the time because things come up, and I would rather see a project come in, even if it's late, than I would not have it come in at all. Okay, so just remember that you've worked way too hard to let an assignment like this pass you by. Okay. So a couple of just reminders for your success is, like Allison has mentioned a few times, use that rubric, know how you're graded, go through it yourself. Use that template. You've already done it. You've already created this project, y'all. It's already done. You're just going to go back and revise or add if needed. Again, if you're stuck or you're not sure on your specific project drafts or you have a question on something, reach out now to your instructor. Don't wait until an hour before due date. reach out now. That way you have time. Like we're talking about this stuff like a whole week early. In week 7 is when your final project is due, and it's due the Sunday of week 7. We're talking about it way early, and we're talking about it early so you can kind of prepare. If you can kind of look through your grade book, look at those drafts, see if you do have any questions, send an email or touch base with your instructor. You can maybe work on some of those revisions, use the academic support team, just so you feel really confident in the document that you're turning in at the end of your term. But use those resources, reach out, utilize us. You can go back and watch this webinar as many times as you need to. It's going to be loaded here tonight. And then the biggest thing is remember to be yourself. Use the examples, share what you've learned, but be yourself. You're not anybody else. And your instructor wants to hear from you as you go through and apply the concepts that you're learning in your classroom, okay? So I wanted to just real quick run you all through Module 7, just real quick, okay? So let me check the chat though really fast, make sure I'm not missing anything. I'm so glad that y'all have enjoyed IDS 105. I think it is such a neat class, and I always love the diverse students that are in my courses every term. I know all your faculty feel this way because we learn so much from you every term long. So I'm so glad that you've been enjoying it. So as Allison said, when you log into those Brightspace classrooms, they're always up here at the top, right? So right between the library and the help button is the academic support team. When you click on academic support, it's going to load up that whole menu of services that Allison walked you through. It always takes a minute. There it is. So you can see all the things up here and you can see all the things right here. Okay, so just remember that's where everything is. Remember with Module 7, so we're in week 6 right now. What do we have due? A journal assignment by Sunday and a discussion, initial post Thursday, peer responses, minimum of 2 by Sunday. That's week 6. Next week, week 7, you're going to notice when you log into your Module 7 that you have this 7-1 discussion, project discussion, non-graded. So this is a discussion opportunity. This is a space where if you want to ask questions about putting together your final project, or you want to share tips of how you did things, or maybe like how you stayed on track this term, or anything that kept you motivated, or something you just absolutely loved about the class, or about like kind of the concepts you've been learning, this is a place to do it. This is not a place to put any pieces or parts of your final project though, okay? It's literally this just there is an opportunity to kind of share your feedback. You don't have to do anything, but if you want to, the space is there, okay? The only assignment that you have that is graded for Module 7 is that 7-2 project. So as always, when you click on guidelines and rubric, it is gonna pop open that whole overview page, right? Students are always like, whoa, there's so much information on this page. There is, but it just kind of really goes over every little piece and part of the project. So it reminds you why you're doing it, how it connects to the classroom and the competencies here at the university. There's an overview. It's a reminder about your scenario. So you use that same scenario all term, right? You picked it or created it in week 2, and you used it week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. Now you're using it as you finish up week 7, right? And then it's just going to walk you through all the questions. So as you scroll, I know it's a lot of scrolling. These are all the questions you've already answered, right? We've already answered it. As a reminder, underneath what to submit, it tells you that you want to make sure that you use that project template to submit it. And then it has this 3 to 5 page Microsoft Word document. This is where students are like, wait, what is this? By time you've answered everything and put everything together, it's typically about 3 to 5 pages. Again, there is not a word count on this assignment. You don't have to have exactly, this many pages, but this is kind of what you're shooting for. Okay, does that make sense? I just want to make sure that that's really clear, because by time you answer all the pieces and parts of the template and all those questions, it's usually right about 3 pages. Sometimes it might be about 5. Okay, so I just don't want you to get stuck on that. If for some reason you need a reminder of those scenarios, make sure you clicked on project scenarios. It opens up the school, workplace, and personal one. If you created your own, go back to your week 2 assignment. Make sure that your instructor was like, yep, we're all good to go here, and this is fine for you to utilize. I know I had a couple of students that did create their own, and there just was a few things they were missing, so they kind of edited their scenario and then utilized that approved scenario the rest of the term. Okay, makes sense? Here's that rubric. So again, there's a lot of scrolling, but it reminds you of everything, what is due, and where to find it. Okay, I'm not going to go all the way through that because you guys know how to do that, but I want to remind you too, when you're looking at the project, these highlights are mine. This is not what you see when you guys do your work, but this is just me to kind of remember all the pieces and parts. So when you guys originally started that project and you popped it open, remember you put your scenario here. So here was workplace, or if you created your own, you have to have all the details for it. But you just type right in here, right? You've already done this. Part 1, focus completely on social justice, right? So go back to week 2, look at your project draft submission from week 2, make sure that everything looked good, you weren't missing anything, check the gradebook. That's how you're going to see that information, okay? And then in module 3, you answered this part 2 questions, these 2 questions. Go back, check the gradebook, look over your instructor feedback. If you're missing anything, need to add anything, or you want to add something, then you want to make sure that you do that. Part 3, you had 3 questions all about intercultural communication and collaboration. Again, check the gradebook, see what your instructor had to say, make sure you have everything you need here. And then the last part was centered around everything regarding conflict, right? So by time you have these all filled out, that gives you about that 3 to 5 page project space. Does that make sense? That's about how, I guess, project length, not space. If you utilized any specific sources, this is where you would cite those sources if you're not sure how to cite them or what to do. Again, another great time to connect with our academic support team on how to do that. But most students don't really have anything, but if there's something specific or a quote or a statistic or something you might have used, make sure you're giving credit where credit is due. Okay. All right, that is the project, y'all. That's the project. I'm going to go to the chat here quick. That's the project. That's how to work with the academic support team. We also went over everything that you have for Module 6, Week 6. You only have a couple weeks left. Y'all, it goes so fast. And I just want to make sure you know like how proud of you the university is. It is a lot to add school to an already very busy schedule. And it's a lot of you figuring out your time management and what and who is a priority. There's a lot of energy and dedication that goes into it. And we're just really, really proud of you. So as you get ready to finish these next couple of weeks and finish the term, give it your all. Okay. Don't miss discussions. Make sure you finish them. Make sure you get your assignments turned in. This is also a great time if you have maybe didn't do so hot on an assignment or you missed something. Get with your instructor and just ask them like, hey, is there any way I could still turn this in? Or, hey, could I redo this? They could always say no, but the answer is always no unless we ask, okay? I would rather you ask me than to like just not do something because every point matters, all right? So any questions, y'all, before we let you go for tonight? I wanted to make sure that we got all your questions answered. Was this helpful? Do we find this helpful? That's always one of my biggest things is I want to make sure that you got all the information that you needed. I am going to pop that survey link in the chat too. And then if you're not in the IDS 105 learning community, make sure you pop in there. I just put like webinar reminders and some motivational things from time to time in there. So make sure you come and find us in SNHU Connect. But I'm so glad that this was helpful. We so appreciate you spending a little bit of your Wednesday night with us. Allison, as always, is an absolute pleasure. Y'all, I swear we work with the best people here at SNHU. And we just love to work with you guys, but it's also super fun to get to see each other from time to time. I'm sure you guys understand that from the online space. So congratulations, y'all. A couple weeks left and you're going to have this term underneath your belt. So finish this week strong. Make sure you reach out to your instructor if you're stuck on anything about that final project. Don't forget about your week 8 discussion. Make sure that you get it in, finish it, because you are 100% worth it. And we're just so excited for you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. That's going to be here before we know it. Go after your best success this term. Allison, thank you. And good night, everybody. You got this, everybody.